Since the 2018 Farm Bill was signed and hemp was no longer considered a controlled substance at the federal level, crop producers everywhere have been looking for ways to profit from it. In the U.S., states have taken varying approaches to making hemp mainstream, but one has taken a more assertive approach. Josh Buettner has that story.
Yeah, that's what I spend every day out here looking and checking, so.
Colby Gardner worked in the financial industry before a burgeoning new field drew him back to the Iowa farm life he grew up around. He had been watching development since the first pilot programs began in 2014. And when the 2018 Farm Bill finally legalized hemp production for the first time in nearly 80 years, Gardner rolled the dice with plans to plant seeds on a former cattle lot in Warren County.
Success for me this year is getting to the end and getting a certificate from the state that says I can sell what I've done. And then I'll let the market dictate what I get from there.
Gardner has one of the more than 70 grow licenses that have been granted for the Hawkeye State's 2020 inaugural planting run. But unlike other crops, hemp applicants must pass a criminal background check, void of any controlled substance convictions within the prior decade. Iowa Department of Agriculture Hemp Administrator Robin Prusner was tasked with weaving state and federal regulations into a coherent program for producers to navigate.
The first thing I tell people they need to do is determine what hemp product they're actually growing. When we do our traditional corn and soybean crops in the state of Iowa, you grow the corn and you can sell it to a multitude of different buyers and processes and end products. Hemp is exactly opposite. You have to first figure out what it is that you're growing, and then that is going to drive all of those decisions.
Hemp can be used to make anything from food to clothing to plastic, even ethanol. But the largest market currently by far is cannabidiol, or CBD, an oil extracted for its various health benefits. Prusner says growers can hold multiple permits, but when tallied together, state law caps the total number of acres at 40.
I commend Iowa for doing that, and I think that obviously, makes people really not want to jump the gun as much having something like that in place.
Kentucky Hemp Industries Association President Tate Hall says farmers in his state are allowed to grow hundreds of acres of hemp. The initiative, begun in 2014, was partially undertaken to help ailing tobacco farmers. Kentucky and other states like Colorado and Illinois have a head start on Iowa, where the state legislature, fresh off a COVID-19 recess, just passed a bill to allow CBD processing within their borders.
I think every part of the plant can be utilized for something, being for the textile industry, the grain industry, cannabinoids. So there's a lot of different facets that people can go off of.
Industry proponents say the biggest obstacle to a full-fledged American hemp revolution is infrastructure. While that gets built out, Colby Gardner plans to haul his first harvest to existing processors in Wisconsin.
Hey, look, with this whole project, you work with what you got. If you get over-leveraged, that's how you see a lot of companies fail.
This season, Gardner will only grow female plants, which are required for CBD. However, his production method comes with a stumbling block rooted in Iowa's past.
You need to worry about drift. I mean, there's remnants of a World War II crop that's all around here, and people kind of realize that, and it could strongly affect what I'm doing here. It could diminish the value of our plants greatly.
Hemp prohibition was briefly loosened in order to make ropes for the U.S. Navy's efforts to combat the Axis powers. According to Iowa Hemp Association President Dr. Christopher Disbrow, Iowa grew upwards of 40,000 acres of the plant decades ago. The side effect being feral hemp, or ditchweed, persists to this day in states like Iowa and Nebraska.
They yield the most fiber and the best.
The reality is that that's government genetics that have basically been left on their own to develop climate tolerances, and it's had 80 years to pretty much go by itself in our ditches.
This is ditchweed. This is what it looks like once it's been dried.
Disbrow was on hand when Governor Kim Reynolds signed the Iowa Hemp Act into law in 2019. He says while Iowa's cautious approach to hemp production has left the state lagging behind some of their neighbors, there is a silver lining.
We don't have to reinvent a lot of these things. We can rely on our neighbors for support in a lot of ways in terms of having outlets to reach out, not just for sales ends, but to take some of that expertise, even when it comes to genetics. A lot of varieties will grow very differently in, say, Oregon than they will in Kentucky. And so having some other Midwest information, some Midwest expertise has been valuable there too.
It's a lot better than it was because there was probably like 500 plants over here.
Gardner diligently patrols a 2-mile radius around his farm to eradicate potential cross-pollination, which can be a daunting task in one of the nation's top wind-producing states.
If I see it, I assume it's a male and it's gone. If I see it and I didn't plant it, it's gone.
Gardner has focused his year-one efforts on cutting costs by modifying existing equipment and methods to work for his operation. Eventually, he'd like to expand, become more self-reliant, and share what he's learned with other Iowans looking to enter what some forecast as a potential multi-billion-dollar industry.
I can tell you right now, you have to have a good sense of humor to be out here because sometimes things just don't go according to plan.
Hemp becoming more mainstream as states come to grips with how to handle it.